Every good gift is from God. God wants us to use these gifts to bring glory to Him by loving others. All of you guys have special powers. Use them for good and not evil. We have other powers. I'm sure you've heard the line, money is power, and you know it's true. And we have lots of it. Compared to the rest of the world, everyone in this room is wealthy. We like to compare with other people around us, our cars, or our clothes, or our careers, maybe our iPods, and say, well, those people are rich, or I'm kind of poor. That's not really true. Compared to the rest of the God's planet, we have financial power. Half of the world's population today lives on 80 NT a day. That's less than you guys spend on teas every day. 80% of the world lives on less than 300 NT per day. So just according to those statistics alone, you have a lot of financial power. Now, some of you guys don't feel like it yet because you're going to be a college student next year. Graham, you're not going to have a whole lot of financial power, okay? But you're going off to earn degrees and learn trades and run family businesses, and really, you're going off to have a life where you have this kind of power. Don't feel guilty about it. It's not wrong. It's a waste of time to feel guilty. But the New Testament tells us, well, actually Paul tells us, to tell rich people like us to use your money for good. That they should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. And you can start now doing that. So use your financial power for good and not evil. Well, you guys have other powers. And you have right now, I couldn't put it all in one sentence, but you've got the power of youth, beauty, energy, good health, fresh ideas, and the new power coming to you of freedom. It's awesome. Getting out of high school is great. I love that. And you know, you don't get to keep all these powers, by the way. They get replaced with powers like wisdom and patience and stability, responsibility, bad knees, things like that. You don't have them for good, ever. But I want you guys to think about using your youth power for good and not evil. Now, everyone at this school has education power, right? There's 120 million kids today that don't even get to go to primary school, and many, many more who don't get high school. And yet you guys tonight are going to get a diploma from a prestigious international school. I know I'm biased, but you guys have gotten a great education. My friends are great teachers. Teachers like Mr. Chandler, who makes history come alive, or Ms. McCoskey, who makes these simulations where I think these guys could pass bills in the U.S. Senate better than the people doing it now. They could. And your parents have sacrificed hard, and honestly, you guys have worked hard. I have watched you work very hard. I've been humbled by how hard you worked. And so use those education powers for good and not evil. And for Christians, the greatest power you have is not your power. It's God's power at work in your life. By stepping out in faith to do things for God and believing that He will supply that power, He gives us the power to love others. Paul says God is working in you. He gives you both the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. It's great. He's going to give you the will and the way to do it. But of course, we can't use God's power for evil. He won't let us do that. What do I really mean when I talk about evil? I mean, evil, that is a pretty strong word. I mean, in superhero terms, I think of the Joker, right? The real bad guy that he's like a character. This guy killed people for fun. Evil, evil, bad. And certainly you guys are not going to use Mr. Gulliver's AP Chem class to make bombs, right? It's not going to happen. Or Mr. Gibson's computer science class to create a diabolical computer virus. Don't do that, friends. And I hope you would never use the persuasion skills you learned in my speech class to scam people. You know, the phrase, use your powers for good and not evil, is a comic book mantra. And those were comic book examples. But the Bible's definition of evil is much more serious. The Bible defines evil as self-centeredness. It's not just the bad things we do, it's the good things we don't do. You know, Jesus tells a story about this guy that is collecting wealth for himself. And he spends his life amassing possessions, which for him was grain. And he had so many that he had some big barns full of grain. And he said, I'll make some bigger barns full of grain. And he fills those barns full of grain. He spends his whole life on it. And he says, now I'm going to go eat and drink and be merry for the rest of my life. And Jesus says, you're a fool. Because tonight you're going to die. And the man had wasted his whole life on himself. He wasted his life. He He had nothing to show for the pursuit of his whole life. All he cared about was himself, and he was indifferent to the others around him. Peace activist and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel says the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It's saying, I don't care. And you know, that's what the world is going to tell you guys too. That's what the world out there tells you. You're going to walk into 7-Eleven, you're leaving here, you're going to walk into CVS or some other place in New Zealand, and you're going to see magazines, Oprah, Self, Better Homes and Gardens. And the primary message of these magazines is going to be to live for yourself, to put yourself first, to pursue your own personal peace and happiness and affluence, to fight for financial security and physical beauty. And yet the Bible shows completely the opposite. It says, do nothing from emptiness or selfish conceit, but through love serve one another. Hebrews 12 tells us to give our whole lives to God as an act of worship. You know, Jesus said he came to give us abundant life, and he did. It's exciting. Our lives are fun. But he said, if you seek to save your life, if you seek just to live for yourself, you're going to lose it. But if you give away your life, that's how you're going to save your life. And then Luke tells us in Acts that actual happiness and joy comes from giving and not receiving. So I think the temptation for you guys, and for me, and for all of us, is that when we see needs in the world, or in the community, or with just our friends, the temptation is to say, well, I'm pretty busy, I'm too important, or I don't have time, or I just don't feel like helping. And yet, we know from the Bible that the real key to success and happiness is to use our powers and our gifts and our time and our energy to love and serve the hurting world around us. So that's my plea, is that you guys will use all those powers you have for good and not evil. Well, let's get a little bit practical as I close. What good things can you guys do? And Brian mentioned all the ones you're already doing. Stole my thunder. Thank you, Brian. But the first thing I think you guys should do is you've all got communication powers, right? You can text and talk at the same time while doing homework and being on Facebook. So the first thing I want you to do is to talk with your parents. I want you to text us. I want you to return our texts. You should call us. You can use Skype. It's free. Let us on your Facebook. We are going to miss you guys. It has been a good thing to be your parents, and we love you. So keep in contact with us. Use your power to love us back. You can also do the same to encourage your friends sitting right here in the room. Hebrews 10 tells us to encourage one another day after day. Keeps people from falling into the deceitfulness of sin. So use your powers to love your friends. And also next year you're going to be roommates, and you're going to be friends, and you're going to be classmates, new folks. And you can use your powers to love them as well. Do you know you're going to have to learn to forgive your roommates, right? Kids in dorms, you have to do that. And Colossians tells us that we have the power to forgive because Jesus forgave us. And you are also going to be able to meet classmates and new friends. Hey, get to know them. Serve them. Help them. There's a lot of hurting people out there, and I've watched you guys love and serve each other. You are going to be able to do that with your new friends. And finally, please use your powers and your gifts and your passions to do good things for something bigger than yourself. There are so many ways to use your passions, and I am so proud of you guys for a lot of the things you've already done. If you have a passion for people who don't know about Jesus, jump right into campus ministries and get to know people. If you have a passion for people in poverty, there's going to be service trips in the States or in New Zealand or Australia or Canada, just like they are here. If you love doing things with your hands, I know a great organization, Habitat for Humanity. You can go build homes for people who don't have it. You can use the skills you've learned here to advocate, to end the scourge of human trafficking, to protect unborn babies, and to preserve the earth that God made. You're going to have some free time now. You really will. You can volunteer at free clinics, at food banks, at community gardens, and after-school programs. You know, I went to college, and I studied. I got good grades. I'm not a hobo. I did all right for myself. And I had a blast. I really had fun. I can't remember any of my classes, though. I really can't. I remember falling asleep a lot in Independence Hall, and that's it. But I do remember a lot of the things I got involved in. When I was a sophomore, I was praying for people in other countries with some friends. And I realized I didn't know any people from another country. Can you believe that? I I didn't know anyone that wasn't from Ohio. I was a little scared. So I said, God, can I meet someone from another country so I can love them? And God answered my prayer, because the very next day I went to sign up for classes, and there was this little Japanese girl sobbing and crying, and she couldn't handle the English, and she was lost. And I talked to her, and I actually became her friend, and I loved it. I found out I really liked doing that. That led me to volunteer to be a conversation partner with Lee Mei Hui, a grad student from Taipei, who's a lifelong friend. I started volunteering with Cambodian refugees, which actually led to an extremely fulfilling career settling refugees. God started that off when I made that prayer, and He provided both the will and the way for me to do those things. So I think that same kind of thing is going to happen with all of you. And I know it's scary and hard and new, but you can walk onto that new campus or career or gap year with your eyes focused in on yourself. And you can have your attitude focused on yourself, like the world tells us to, on putting yourself first, on indulging in new freedoms, and being indifferent to those around you. But please don't choose that. You can walk onto those campuses and gap years and jobs, and you can be like a superhero, like Spider-Man, or actually like Jesus. You can use your powers for good and not evil. I really hope and pray you do that, because the world needs you guys, and you'll be good at it. Thanks.
Each year, a variety of awards of excellence are presented to outstanding individuals in the graduating class. You can see the history of the winners on plaques that hang up in the high school office, or the main office, and these recipients tonight will be added to those plaques. The Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Don Bettinger, will be presenting these awards. In the event of a tie, would both recipients please come forward to receive the award. The Valedictorian Award is presented to the graduating senior with the highest grade point average at the end of 7 semesters. To be eligible for consideration as valedictorian, a student must have completed no fewer than 2 semesters at Morrison Academy and is required to complete the 8th and final semester at Morrison. With a 4.09 GPA, our valedictorian is Brian S. Hahn. The salutatorian is the graduating senior with the 2nd highest grade point average at the end of 7 semesters. Again, the student must have completed no fewer than 2 semesters at Morrison Academy and is required to complete the 8th semester at Morrison. Our salutatorian with a 4.08, Alan John. Exercise my executive right here. I think there's something worth noting here when it comes to GPA. I just received this at noon, and it's pretty remarkable. There were actually 8 students in this class that were above a 4.0. And I want to recognize them. So as I say their name out, I'm going to ask you to stand. Kristen Lynn with a 4.01. Just stand where you are, please. Michael Wu with a 4.02. Jia Chun with a 4.03. Joanne Chun with a 4.05. Zoe Lowe with a 4.08.